Hello, I'm Edward Polachek, Artistic Director for Concert Artists of Baltimore, and I'm here to welcome you to our next concert, our second concert of our 2010-2011 season, called Then and Now. It's on November 20th at 8 p.m. at the Gordon Center for Performing Arts in Owings Mills, and I'm particularly excited about this concert because it is in a certain sense a signature concert for concert artists. Now, many people are going to start accusing me of saying that I'm saying the same thing about every concert because I said that actually about our opening concert. And in a sense, you're right. So those of you who are accusing me, mea culpa. Our opening concert on October 16th was a wonderful success, and I was very pleased with that because it demonstrated a thing that I've been trying to define concert artists about ever since our inception, and that is that we do a mix of very familiar and very less familiar repertoire combined on a program. And in that particular program, it showed the two aspects of a great composer, Robert Schumann. A totally unknown work, his Missa Sacra, and a very famous work, his Piano Concerto. On our November 20th concert, again, we're doing this wonderful mix of well-known and not so well-known, but not just one composer, but many composers. We are opening with a piece, well, the whole first half of the program is all-American music, Dead and Alive. And in fact, we're going to be going backwards in terms of chronology because our opening piece is by Ellen Zwilich, who is very much alive. And a piece of hers called, it's a variation set for strings that is not that often performed, but a very dramatic work. And I would have to say that if anything would define this particular program on November 20th, I would say it is drama. We go from a very kind of somber opening to a much more lighthearted work by Leonard Bernstein, and a very, very short work actually. 3 choruses from The Lark, the play The Lark, that he wrote as kind of incidental music for chorus a cappella, and then closing the first half with a set of 7 works, 7 pieces, 7 movements by Randall Thompson called Frostiana. And it is a 7-movement work of the various verses and poems of Robert Frost that Randall Thompson set to music. And I find this particular segment of the program very unusual in that although the Thompson pieces are perhaps quite well known, this version that you're going to hear is probably very, very seldom performed, and that is because we have an orchestra with concert artists. With our chorus, we are going to do the original version, which is for orchestra and chorus. Most of the time they're done with just piano and chorus. And they are wonderful also. But he orchestrated these pieces, which tells me that he probably had quite a love of these particular works for him to take the time and the effort to go from just the piano version into an orchestrated version of these. As I said, there are 7 movements of these Frostiana works, and 2 of them happen to be my all-time favorite pieces of music ever. One is the poem that he set called, a very famous poem called The Road Not Taken. And I find this particular version a very emotional, I mean, it's drama on a very introverted level, and it becomes almost intellectually a very pensive piece, a meditative piece for the listener. And if I can play just the opening of that choral piece, I think it's brilliant the way Thompson set this piece of music. goes on like that, and you have this feeling of almost a procession or a solitary walk through the woods, because this traveler comes across, as he's traveling through, or she is traveling through the woods, comes upon a fork in the road, and the decision is, of course, which road to take. And I think that those of you who know the poem know how that ends. I'm not going to give it away. You have to come to the concert to hear that. And I think that the way Thompson sets it, in a wonderful way, puts a halo onto the words. Interestingly, I learned that when Robert Frost actually heard the setting of these pieces of music, one wasn't sure about his reaction. Some say that he was not terribly happy with it, so he didn't say much. Others say that he was so overwhelmed by it that he couldn't say much about it. I like to take the latter opinion because I think that they're brilliant settings. And one thing that I'm very happy about is to be able to kind of revive the music of Randall Thompson, because there are a number of composers whose music is very much worth performing, and we're losing them. They're beginning to fade, and it's not just the 20th century composers, it's also the 19th and 18th century composers as well. And I think that one of our charges at concert artists is to find those pieces and keep them alive in the repertory. Now, before I go too far on about explaining this concert, I'm going to say what happens after intermission, which is a very wonderful featured soloist, Lyudmila Gorgievskaya, who was the winner of the 2009, I believe, American Liszt Society William Garrison piano competition. She is going to be our featured soloist with another unusual, and I say unusual because, again, you don't hear it performed that often, although it's a rather great work and somewhat familiar work of the great composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. It is his Piano Concerto No. 24, Köchel No. 491 in C minor. And I particularly am thrilled that we were able to get Lyudmila to perform this, because I like to think of our programs as a kind of pyramid structure that goes up and then comes back down and leaves the listener somewhat bookended from the very beginning. We begin in C minor with the Zwilich piece, and we end in C minor with the Mozart piece. With Mozart, it's a rather unusual work in that of the 27 or so piano concerti that he wrote, there are only two in the minor mode. One is the great D minor, and then there's this one, the C minor, which comes after the D minor. And it's even further more unusual in that there are so few pieces of music that Mozart wrote in the minor mode, period, let alone in the key of C minor. And I probably can name on one hand the pieces that I know that are in C minor, not the least of which is the Grand Mass that we did several years back. This is a piece of music that opens very quietly with the strings in unison, and you're actually not aware of the key of the piece, much the way Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which again also is in C minor, opens, and you cannot tell from the opening measures what the key is. In the Beethoven Fifth Symphony, does not give you a clue really to tell you what the tonic is, because that could be E major very easily. It's not until the final that we know it's in C minor. And the same kind of thing happens with this piano concerto. The first three notes outline an A flat major chord, but then he goes to, so it finally brings us around to this key of C minor in a very chromatic way. And what I love about this particular piano concerto is that it was written at a time in Mozart's life when he had already left Salzburg for the great city of Vienna to seek his fame and fortune, and primarily pursue his love of opera. And so what you get in this piano concerto from all three movements is, in a kind of a certain sense, a mini version of a Mozart opera. Very, very dramatic. Now, where many of pieces in the classical period, and particularly with Mozart, would begin in a minor mode, will end in the parallel major. In other words, he'll start you in the key of a minor mode, and then parallel it with the major key. So it ends somewhat joyous and celebratory, and what we think of as a positive note in the major mode. Not so with this piano concerto. And I'm thinking it's possibly because of what was going on in his life at the time, which was not an easy life at this particular time, because he was trying to figure out how he was going to get break into the scene excuse me, in Vienna in the opera. So it's possible that he ends this particular piano concerto in C minor because there's a little bit of a darkness in his life, and he's not sure how it's going to end. Nonetheless, in hearing this piano concerto, one is immediately swept into the life, the drama, the emotion, the sheer beauty of Mozart's ability to compose, all within the space of about a half an hour. And therein lies, I think, the genius of this particular piano concerto. So don't miss November 20th, 8 p.m. at the Gordon Center. Thank you for joining me.